Hey guys, today I want to visit with you on the subject of little entrepreneurs. You know, I remember things back to my childhood that caused me to think about the fact that in some ways, I appreciate growing up in a household where we didn't really have much money. Because as a child, you know, when you go to the convenience store and you want a sucker or you want an ice cream or you want some football cards or even go to the department store and you want a new bike and you realize your parents don't have the money to buy that, you start picking up at an early age that, hey, I need to make some money. And so there was an entrepreneurial side of me that kind of started to develop even from the time I was 8 years old. And then along came the Beverly Hillbillies. And I've got to tell you, that show really impacted me because I was glued to the TV practically every day, Monday through Friday, watching the Beverly Hillbillies. And when, you know, the story about Jed Clampett, you know, shooting at the ground, and up from the ground came a bubbling crude, and it was oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. That got me fired up because that meant that Jed could pack up his family and move to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools and movie stars, and that got me. I mean, I'm like, how do I get to Beverly Hills and live in a mansion where there's swimming pools and movie stars? Well, there's oil there. And it just so happened that I grew up in West Texas, where every time you walked out the door, you saw oil wells and you saw pump jacks. And pump jacks are like, you know, we call them grasshoppers, where a pump jack is once an oil well has been capped off and it's actually in production, you know, that pump jack is pumping oil out of the ground. So we'd drive by pump jacks all the time, and I'd say, hey, Dad, how do we get some of that oil one day? And he'd say, son, you know, you have to own land, and those are wealthy people who have that oil. And so even though Dad was telling me you can't have that, it caused me to try to find ways to make money and be an entrepreneur. So at an early age, I was selling grit magazines, going from door to door and selling those magazines for 25 cents a pop. Every school fundraiser we ever had, whether it was selling magazines or anything else, I was always going to sell the most things, whether it was, you know, candy bars, you name it. You know the fundraiser gig. I was the top salesman, getting the prizes every time because I wanted money for football cards and money for Cokes and candy or things that I wanted to buy from the local department store when we went to town once a month. And then I began to mow lawns into my teen years and make extra money mowing lawns. But then something happened that kind of switched all that, and I can't really put a finger on it, but there was a point in time in my senior year that I got my first job. And that was trading hours for dollars. And that was at Dairy Queen. And there's nothing wrong with that except for the fact that it started changing my mindset. Now all I needed to do was get a job to make money. So I went from Dairy Queen to the next summer working at Cotton Gin, 7 days a week, a graveyard shift, 12 hours every night for $4 an hour. And then I worked in grain elevators for 3 straight years after that. Then I worked in cleaning dairies for dairy cleaning service, you know, after that. So basically I started these jobs that really completely changed my mindset and took me out of the entrepreneurial thought of doing things, selling magazines, mowing lawns, doing things that were going to produce to just taking jobs, trading hours for dollars. And then once you get in that pattern, it becomes a vicious cycle. And now you're losing your entrepreneurial edge. And so the goal of this particular training is answering the question, how do I get my entrepreneurial... The goal of this training would be probably asking the question and even answering the question, how do I get my entrepreneurial bent? Either back or how do I get it, period? And I think the answer to that is first you have to understand that your atmosphere is everything. You know, people are going to... you're really going to respond in life according to the environment that you're in. The environment shapes you. The people you're around shape you. And so if you're around small minds, you're going to have a small mindset. And if you're around people with no vision, many times you're going to lack vision because that's the atmosphere the atmosphere is like coming in on you. The atmosphere affects you. So if there's no entrepreneurial people around you in your life, then obviously you're probably not going to get entrepreneurial ideas. So what we have to do as parents, we have to be creative and encourage our kids to be entrepreneurial. We have to encourage them to be creative. We have to encourage them to dream big. It's always about getting them to expand their vision. But what about you personally? Whether you're a teenager or an adult right now, well, you have to do the same thing. You have to extract yourself from the current environment you're in. You have to begin to look for people that think bigger. You have to surround yourself with with people that are going to give you creative ideas. I mean, I'll give you an example. Why didn't anyone ever tell me, instead of going to work at the grain elevator, why didn't someone just say, hey man, let me tell you, Danny, why don't you go get a valet job at a luxury hotel? You can work probably 25% of what you're working here, hour-wise, and make 10 times more money being a valet at a luxury hotel, and you'll get to meet and interact with wealthy people and possibly get some great connections there. How come no one ever told me, hey, why don't you go to Alaska? You love fishing. It's your favorite hobby. Why don't you move to Alaska during the summers while you're in college and be a fishing guide and work for a fishing guide service? Because what you'll be doing is not only fulfilling your love for fishing, but you'll be getting paid to also guide wealthy people that are fishing all summer and build relationships with wealthy people from all over America and possibly the world and get great connections. How come no one ever gave me those ideas? How come no one ever said, hey Danny, why don't you go get a job at the Four Seasons Resort in some other place, some other state, or go to Mexico and get a job at a luxury resort, working for a luxury resort, where it puts you around wealthy people that have mindsets that are entrepreneurial in nature, that you can build relationships with, and next thing you know, they're going, hey, this kid's smart. This kid's got something. And they bring you into their world, and you're really climbing so much faster through whatever ladders of success you would like to label that as, just from the mere fact that you have built relationships. You're making money and building relationships at the same time. No one ever told me these things. So it wasn't until I became really about 31 years old that I finally learned the answer to this whole question is get around people who, one, they don't have to be ultra rich, but they have to have a wealthy mindset. Get around people who think about entrepreneurialism, get around people who talk about creativity, get around people who dream big, and get around people who have had success so that you can glean from them and learn success tips that are going to be necessary to add to your creativity and your strategy to become more in life so that you can develop your entrepreneurial mind and have success.